You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Get your sights up, aim high, let him see your fire. Pray for
Welcome into STB Sports Take. I am your host, Sean Bingham, and we have a fantastic podcast for you on tap today. Why? Because it's March Madness, baby, and we're talking the NCAA tournament. I mean, have we been treated to a better opening weekend, first two rounds of the NCAA tournament in a long, long time? I mean, it's always amazing. It's always the best time of the year. It's like Christmas for me, you know? But this was especially good. I mean, this was especially good. And I've decided, I mean, I've always kind of thought this way, but we're going to be talking about the whole tournament. We're going to be talking about what happened on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 of the greatest days of my year. And we're going to break down what's about to happen this upcoming Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and beyond before we crown a national champion. But we also had a great Warriors and Spurs game. I mean, this is a great show we've got in store for you. So buckle up, or you're in for a good one. And as always, I want to hear what you guys are thinking. So send me some tweets at Sean Bingham on Twitter, SeanBingham. And also check out our website, stbsportstake.com. You can comment on our articles and stuff there, get involved in the action. But basketball is in full swing. I mean, the NBA picture is starting to kind of round itself out. But more importantly, right now, this time of year, it's all about the college game. And I just love it. I honestly think that the NCAA tournament is the greatest sporting event in the world. If I had to choose between this or the NFL playoffs, I would choose March Madness. I really would. I would choose this over the World Cup. Well, that's easy for me because soccer is like maybe my 5th favorite sport. I would choose this even over the Olympics. I really would. I mean, that would be a tough one because the Olympics are so rare. But man, how can you pick a better... How can you think of a better tournament than March Madness? It's so amazing. I mean, this year alone, in the first round, there were 13 games. There's only 32 games in the first round. 13, almost half of them, were won by the higher seeded or the worse seeded team. The higher lower thing is always confusing because it's like high sounds better, but really a higher seed means you were the worst seed. So 13 of the 32 games in the opening round were won by the higher seeded team. 13 of them, think about that. 13, that's crazy. That's almost half. 3 of those were the 9s beating the 8s, but all the others were like pretty significant upsets. I mean, can you think of a bigger upset than Michigan State losing? I mean, Michigan State, in my opinion, is the best 2 seed we've had in a long, long time. I went on the show just last week saying how Michigan State probably deserved a 1 seed and how they were going to go to the Final Four. And then in the first round, they lose to 15 seed Middle Tennessee, 90-81. I mean, it was a close game, but not really. Like, it wasn't one of those games that was decided in the last couple possessions. I mean, it was like there was a minute or 2 left, and it was pretty clear, like, the Spartans are going down, and brackets were busted all over the country. So thank goodness for second chance brackets, right? I'm going to do that second chance bracket. In fact, I'll launch one for STB Sports Take as well. So check that out on our website, stbsportstake.com. I want to get everybody in on the second chance bracket, but the Spartans are gone. Oddly enough, the upsets kind of rounded themselves out a little bit in the second round. And we did end with all of the number 1s reaching the Sweet 16, 2 of the 2s, 2 of the 3s, and 2 of the 4s. So technically, the Sweet 16 is, if everything were to go, as the committee plans, which never in the history of the tournament has it done that. But if it did, you'd have, of course, all 4 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4 seeds in the Sweet 16. And they actually got more than half of them in there. So, because they got half of the 2s, 3s, and 4s, and then they got all of the 1s. Oregon kind of squeaked that one out just last night, but over St. Joe's. Good game. Yesterday was phenomenal. But let's go back. Let's talk about that first round. Again, there's 13 out of 32 games that were won by the higher seeded team, the worst seeded team, I'll say, because it's just confusing even to me as I say it. But and such amazing games. There were so many. Buzzer beaters, so many great overtime games, close games in the end. So there were 5 games, 5 this weekend, that were decided at the buzzer. Literally at the buzzer. Actually 6, because the Cincinnati game, the guy dunks it at the buzzer, which would have sent it to overtime. And, they go back and look at the replay, and the ball is still in his hand. And that sent St. Joe's on to the second round, where they, like I mentioned just barely, they lost a close one to Oregon just last night. But at the buzzer, Cincinnati has the ball. If he lays it in, the game goes to overtime. But he goes for the dunk, which big men are taught to do, and the ball is just barely still in his fingertips, even though it's over the cylinder, even partially in the cylinder, because he's still touching it. They wave the dunk off, and game's over. And they, CBS, they end up getting one of their referees, to come on and analyze the whole thing or whatever for us, and he explained that, that's the rule. If they're touching the ball, that is what it is. And so I agree with the call. I think it was a good call. I kind of wonder if maybe the rule should be altered slightly, for situations like that where the ball is actually like in the cylinder. I get that he was still touching the ball, and so you have to make that call. But it did kind of make you wonder, like, I don't know. I mean, he's put the ball in the hoop at that point. It's just kind of an interesting thought, but. Cincinnati loses that one, but five others were decided at the buzzer with buzzer-beating wins. So just to recap, some of the really exciting ones. Hopefully everybody watched these games. If you didn't, you need to go and maybe download the NCAA app so you can watch the highlights of every game. I personally spent in the last 4 days. I probably spent, I don't even know, probably 6 or 7 hours a day watching basketball. I finally managed to get myself off the couch and go to the gym on Saturday, where I spent 3 hours trying to make up for lost workouts because I'd been watching so much basketball. But even then, I've got my phone with me, and I'm able to watch games a little bit while I'm there. It's just, this is the best time of the year. It really is. This tournament is all about heart. It's all about crowning a true champion, and there's no money involved for the players. They're all playing because they just want to win. The coaches love it, the fans love it, the whole country fills out their brackets. Everybody's paying attention, everybody cares. It's win or go home. There's no like, hey, we had a bad night, we'll get them next game, in like a 7-game series or something. You win or you go home, and I love it. So, some buzzer beaters. The Northern Iowa game. Number 11, the 11 seed Northern Iowa hits that deep three, Jesperson, the senior, Paul Jesperson, to beat number 6 Texas. He goes bank from half court at the buzzer, and he ended up with 14 points, 3 rebounds, but he goes bank from half court at the buzzer, and Northern Iowa, the 11 seed, upsets number 6 Texas. And I thought with Shaka Smart on the bench for the Longhorns that they were a threat to go to the Sweet 16. As you remember from last week, I took Texas A&M to the Sweet 16 from that region there, which ended up being correct. But I did think that Shaka Smart, he was the guy that took VCU deep, and I thought Texas would get it done. But Northern Iowa, they're a good tournament team for sure. But that buzzer beater from half court was absolutely amazing, wasn't it? It was literally a half court heave as the buzzer was sounding, and he just banks it home for the 3-point win. So Northern Iowa knocks off Texas 75-72. Another amazing one, number 9 Providence, down 1 to number 8 USC, scores 69-68. They're inbounding it under the hoop, and obviously the Trojans are very, very focused on the Big East Player of the Year, Chris Dunn. He'd been having a great game, and you see as like 3 defenders kind of follow Dunn as he breaks off, to the left along the baseline, and it leaves Rodney Bullock wide open under the hoop. They inbound it to him, and he just lays it in for the win at the buzzer. So, and they were actually down 1, so that was not going to go to overtime if they didn't score. So they ended up winning 70-69, Providence over USC again in the first round. Another cool first rounder was buzzer beater. Was number 7 Iowa. They win 72-70 over the 10 seed Temple, and that was in overtime. And what was really cool is that Iowa was actually ahead 70-67, but Quentin Decoy, He shoots a three for Temple, gets fouled with just a few seconds to go, or at the end of regulation, basically like with a second to go. And he hits all 3 free throws, like ice in his veins, hits all 3 free throws at the end of regulation, forces overtime, and then it goes into overtime. It's back and forth, and then Iowa puts up this shot almost at the buzzer, and it's an air ball, and Adam Woodbury does a little push off for the Hawkeyes there, a little push in the back, catches an air ball, and puts it back immediately, all in one motion, almost like it was an alley-oop, and that literally went in just at the buzzer. In fact, if he had dunked it, it might not have counted. It might have been a Cincinnati situation where the ball's still in his hand, So that was another amazing buzzer beater. Iowa, the 7 seed over the 10 seed Temple. Then we went over the Cincinnati dunk, and then trying to think of some other cool ones. And then yesterday, let's get into yesterday. Sunday night, if you missed Sunday night, you have to go watch it. That was some of the best basketball you're ever going to see. Sunday night was absolutely incredible. Let's start with the 6 seed Notre Dame. They're playing the 14 seed Stephen F. Austin, which we can go back and talk about them even more. But that game was just so back and forth, so amazing. And Stephen F. Austin, they're a great team. And that walk-up guy, the big lumberjack, literally, because he's that's what Stephen F. Austin's mascot is the Lumberjacks, but with his beard and stuff. That guy, I've never heard of him until this tournament, and he impressed me. That guy, he can play. But so Notre Dame comes down 1. To me, I thought the game was going to be won by Stephen F. Austin. I really did. I was kind of excited too to see a 14 seed go into the Sweet 16, and Notre Dame shoots, misses, and on the third attempt, Rex Pfluger, a guy that was 0 for 1 at this point in the game, had taken one shot and missed it, does kind of a volleyball tip, spin tip thing at the buzzer, and on their third attempt, Notre Dame, on their last possession, they get 2 offensive rebounds, and on the third shot attempt of the possession, Rex Pfluger gets his only bucket of the game at the buzzer, and Notre Dame wins 76-75. Just an incredible game. And you're trying to watch that, and you're trying to watch the Wisconsin game. Wisconsin is back and forth with Xavier. Xavier, the 2 seed, and Wisconsin, the 7 seed. And it's back and forth. And there's the Texas A&M Northern Iowa game, and there's just all these incredible games. You can barely keep up, and you're switching channels, and it's just awesome. And, so let's talk just a little bit about how incredible that Wisconsin game was. It's the 7 seed Wisconsin, the 2 seed Xavier, winner goes to the Sweet 16. It's an awesome game. It's going back and forth. And the ending of the game was just so clutch by Bronson Koenig. This guy, the shot clock's kind of winding down, and it's basically a broken play, and he just gets the ball and takes this really ballsy, deep 3 and drills it, right? Just drills it. And you're thinking, oh, wow, they might do this. Wisconsin might do this. And then on the final play of the game, he gets the ball, goes into the, cutting along to the corner, does this step back, deep corner 3, and just swish right at the buzzer. And he fell into the bench. He knew it was going in. You see the post-game interview. He's like, I knew it was going in before I even shot it. I practice that all the time. He was as confident as could be. And that confidence showed because he hit 2 back-breaking threes that ended up winning the game for the 7 seed Wisconsin. They win 66-63. So the game's tied at 63 when he hits that corner 3 at the buzzer. Game over. And Xavier's coach even said, he's like, I've never been on the receiving end of 2 back-breaking threes like those by Bronson Koenig. Those were just absolutely clutch. And he's right, they were. Those were so clutch. And, Bill Murray, his son, Bill Murray, the famous actor, his son is an assistant coach at Xavier. And, the camera cuts to Bill Murray after Koenig drills the 3, and it's just, the face was priceless. Bill Murray's face was just agony. You feel for the guy, you feel for Xavier and all the guys that work so hard, but it just made that moment even that much more priceless. Everyone was just in utter shock. And Wisconsin on to the Sweet 16 for the 5th time in 6 seasons. The 5th time in the last 6 years they're in the Sweet 16. That is an incredible run. That's very, very impressive. So Wisconsin, the 7 seed, into the Sweet 16 on a buzzer beater, step back 3, Bronson Koenig from the corner. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the overtime games, and I want to talk especially about the Texas A&M Northern Iowa game last night. It goes into double overtime. Northern Iowa, the 11 seed, Texas A&M, the 3 seed, and you felt like the Aggies, were going to learn from the first round upset that Northern Iowa had already done, and that they would, they'd be prepared for them, right? Northern Iowa came to ball, and the game's, it goes into double overtime. But how did it go into double overtime? UNI was ahead by 12 points with 34 seconds left in regulation. Think about that. They were ahead by 12 points with 34 seconds left in regulation. What happens? Aggies get a bucket, UNI gets a turnover. Aggies get a bucket, UNI gets a turnover. Aggies get a bucket, UNI gets a turnover. And it's just like they were giving them the ball. They could not figure out how to inbound the ball against that Texas A&M press. And two times, the inbounder, not the inbounder, but once the ball was inbounded, the guy that was getting trapped tried to throw the ball off of a Texas A&M defender so that it would bounce off his leg and go out of bounds, and they'd get to try again, right? And twice it failed. Both times it was hit the ground and then was caught by a Texas A&M player who then laid it in. And before you know it, Texas A&M fans were leaving the stadium. They literally had left the stadium. Many of them had left. And somehow, some way, Texas A&M fights back from down 12 with 34 seconds left to tie the game, goes into overtime, goes into a second overtime. And, Daniel House for Texas A&M, he had 0 points with 5 minutes to go in regulation. He finished with 22. 22 points in the last 5 minutes of regulation plus the 2 overtimes. So he went off in the last 15 minutes of that game, combining the 2 overtimes with the last 5 minutes of regulation. Scores 22 points. UNI really just kind of collapses. You feel for those Northern Iowa seniors, Paul Jesperson and a couple other guys. You feel for them because they honestly just collapsed down the stretch. They should be in the Sweet 16, but Texas A&M Aggies find a way. And 538.com, if you guys haven't checked out that website, it's pretty cool. It gives you like the percentage chance that each team has of winning, at any given time. And they had A&M at a 0.1 chance of winning, a 0.1% chance of winning when there was 34 seconds left in the game. So Northern Iowa literally was at a 99.9% chance of winning at that point. There was like the smallest like hairline fracture of margin available for them to somehow blow it, and they managed to find that hairline fracture and they blew it. So A&M onto the Sweet 16. So A&M a 3 seed in the Sweet 16. So let's just look at the Sweet 16. In the South, you have the 1 Kansas versus the 5 Maryland. You have 2 Villanova versus 3 Miami. And then in the West, you have the 1 Oregon versus 4 Duke, 2 Oklahoma, 3 Texas A&M. So the West went chalk. The South basically went chalk. You had Maryland in there as the 5 instead of, I think Cal was the 4 in that one. Yeah, Cal got upset in the first round by Hawaii, the 13 seed, one of the many first-round upsets that was really fun to watch. And that game wasn't really even that close. Hawaii won by 11, and, in Cal's defense, they were without 2 of their best players. One guy, they knew in advance wasn't going to be able to play, and then a second guy, I guess, was sick, they said. And then a third starter ended up fouling out, and so Cal was really undermanned. So the Hawaii, they get the first-round victory there as a 13 seed, which kind of opened the door a little bit, you could argue, for Maryland. So Maryland, the 5. So yeah, the South almost went chalk with the exception of Cal, but they were replaced by the 5 seed Maryland. And then the West went totally, chalk to the Sweet 16, 1 through 4. The East, you have 1 UNC versus 5 Indiana, and then 6 Notre Dame versus 7 Wisconsin. And then the Midwest, you have 1 Virginia versus 4 Iowa State. And then the interesting one, 10 Syracuse versus 11 Gonzaga. Now, I'm going to pat myself on the back. While I was dead wrong about Michigan State, obviously so was everybody else, I was absolutely right about the Zags. I knew that Utah was not going to go to the Sweet 16 as a 3 seed down there. I looked at that matchup and I thought, Gonzaga, Seton Hall, I don't really care who wins that game. They're going to beat Utah. And I was very confident that it would be Gonzaga to beat Seton Hall and Gonzaga to beat Utah. And Gonzaga steamrolled into the Sweet 16. They beat Seton Hall good, and then they beat Utah by a record 23 points. That's the highest margin, tied for the highest margin of victory by a double-digit seed in the tournament. So the 3 Utah gets embarrassed. The Pac-12 as a whole has just been completely annihilated. 8 Colorado lost to 9 UConn. 8 USC lost to 9 Providence. 4 Cal lost to 13 Hawaii. 6 Arizona lost to 11 Wichita State. And Wichita State had to play in a play-in game even. And then 3 Utah, gets embarrassed by 11 Gonzaga. It was just a complete and total breakdown by the Pac-12. Oregon, the only team in the Sweet 16 from the Pac-12. They started with 6 teams. All of them were the lower or the better seeds in their first round matchups. Only Oregon and Utah won their opening round games, a 1 and a 3 seed. Those are not hard games to win in the opening round. And even from there, only Oregon makes it to the Sweet 16. And even that was a close one against St. Joe's. So the Pac-12 wins the worst conference award for the tournament opening round. Best conference award, very clear who that goes to. That goes to the ACC, who has a record 6 teams in the Sweet 16. Think about that. 6 teams from one conference are in the Sweet 16. What is that, like 40%? I mean, I'm not the best mathematician in the world. Let's pull out a calculator. What is that? 6 divided by 16. Just do some quick math. 37.5%. I mean, that's incredible. 37.5% of the teams left are from the same conference, and we're down to 16 teams. 6 of them from one conference. 1 UNC, 1 Virginia, 3 Miami, 4 Duke, 6 Notre Dame, 10 Syracuse. I also said Syracuse would win. Everybody was saying they didn't belong in. I was even saying, maybe they didn't. Maybe their resume didn't warrant it. But I was like, they're going to win though. So if you can win your opening round game, you deserve to be in the tournament. And they did. Then they won their second round game too. They got a little bit of a pass because Michigan State lost to Middle Tennessee. And so that kind of opened the door for Syracuse to, get into the Sweet 16, because now instead of playing the 2 Michigan State to go to the Sweet 16, they had to play the 15 seed Middle Tennessee. And, Jim Boeheim had a chance to look at film and see what they did to Michigan State and prepare, and it paid off because they won easily over Middle Tennessee to make the Sweet 16. But what an opening round. What an opening round. The ACC, so impressive. I mean, we knew they were the best conference all year long, and that's honestly why I picked North Carolina to win it all instead of Kansas or Michigan State or someone like that, is because I thought, these guys, they play in by far the best conference in basketball, and they won the regular season outright, and they won their tournament outright. If you can do that, and again, the hardest conference in basketball, you're my pick to win it all. So I'm sticking with my UNC pick to win it all. I am admittedly glad for my bracket's sake that Indiana was able to beat Kentucky, because that was the one game I was a little worried about, was that Kentucky matchup in the Sweet 16, but now Kentucky's not there. So, which Coach Cal, for the first time since he's been at Kentucky, will not be in the Sweet 16. He's actually gone to the Elite 8 or further 5 years in a row, and this year they lose in the round of 32 for the first time since he's been at Kentucky coaching the Wildcats. So, big win for Indiana, huge win for that program. And that was a game that, honestly, that was a better than a 4-5 matchup. That should not have been a second round game. I'm glad it was, because it was just so fun to watch. But that felt like a second round or a second weekend matchup. That felt like a Sweet 16 or even an Elite 8 type of matchup. But we got to see it in the second round, and the Hoosiers are victorious, and they're in the Sweet 16. So Hoosiers in Indiana, the Hoosiers in North Carolina. I mean, that's going to be a tough game for North Carolina, but I feel like it's a very winnable game, and so I would obviously stick with my North Carolina pick there. So let's stick in the East, and let's just kind of go through the bracket here. Again, tweet me, your stuff, and while I've got a second here, make a little plug. Subscribe to the podcast if you're listening to this on iTunes. take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, give us maybe a 5-star rating if you think if you like what you hear. Give us, and even if you don't, give us some feedback. Give us some feedback. Let us know what we can do to improve your listening experience. So anyway, sticking in the East, the 1 UNC and the 5 Indiana, I'd stick with the Tar Heels there. Then it's interesting, the 6 and the 7, Notre Dame and Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin, is coming off of a really sweet win with that Koenig corner step back 3 at the buzzer to win just last night over Xavier. But I think that Notre Dame as the 6, I'm going to take them to beat Wisconsin, which would make for an ACC Elite 8 matchup to go to the Final Four. North Carolina, Notre Dame, that could be interesting. I would take North Carolina still in that one. Let's go to the Midwest, the 1 Virginia and the 4 Iowa State. So again, folks, if you've got your second chance bracket out, pay attention because I feel like I did pretty good. I had 10 of my Sweet 16 teams were correct. I've got 6 of my 8 Elite 8 teams still left, 3 of my 4 Final Four teams left, both of my championship teams left, and then my overall champ still in it. So I'm sitting pretty in my bracket because all the big points come from here on out. And I've got a lot of teams that I picked still left. I'm still going to do a second chance bracket though because I think it's a really fun idea. So if you're doing your second chance bracket, if you're in an office pool or in a pool with your buddies and you're throwing, you're chasing bad money with good, or you're throwing good money at bad, or whatever the phrase is, here's your chance. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. In the East, we're going to have a North Carolina-Notre Dame matchup in the Elite 8, and North Carolina will win. So North Carolina is going to the Final Four. They will beat Indiana, Notre Dame will beat Wisconsin, and then North Carolina will beat Notre Dame. That's the Final Four in the East. In the South, which is the top left part of your bracket, Kansas and Maryland, I think Kansas wins that one. I don't think they'll blow them out, but I don't really see that being a game that's comes down to the last few possessions. I think the game will be in hand with a couple minutes to go. I think Kansas wins that one. And then Villanova, Miami. This could be a really, really tough one. What's funny is I tweeted this yesterday, but I always give Villanova the benefit of the doubt. And this year I thought, I'm done. Villanova's let me down like several years in a row. They went to the Final Four in 2009, and since then they haven't even gotten out of the second round. And they're always like a pretty high seed. They were the 9 seed a couple of times where you're not really expected to get to the Sweet 16 because if you win your first game, your second one's against the 1 seed. But still, they're Villanova. They've got some history there. They've been to the Final Four in 2009. Jay Wright's a good coach. They get good players. They've been in the Big East and all that. And anyway, they get to that second game, and they just can't seem to get out of the first weekend, basically. So I was done. I was done trusting Villanova. I predicted that they would lose in the second round, and I was wrong. They're now in the Sweet 16, and they looked really, really good, actually. They looked like one of the strongest teams in the tournament, shooting 59% basically in both games of the opening weekend. So now they're playing the 3 in Miami, and Jim Larinaga, to me, is one of the greatest coaches in college basketball, and Miami looks good. I picked Miami originally to go to the Elite 8 out of this South region to play Kansas, and I would stick with that. If I was you, I would stick with that. But for those of us in our regular brackets that already picked Miami, maybe hedge your bet on your second chance bracket and pick Villanova in this one. If we're just trying to play the odds, that's what I'm personally going to do. I feel confident enough in teams like Kansas and UNC that I'm sticking with them in both brackets. But Miami, Villanova, that's a little bit more of a coin flip, especially the way Villanova looked in this opening weekend. So I would maybe, for those that already have Miami, hedge your bet and take Villanova. For those that had Villanova, hedge your bet and take Miami, because that's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to that one. In the West, either way, let me finish the South. Either way from there, I say Kansas wins, and I think the Jayhawks go to the Final Four. In the West, Oregon and Duke. I had picked Oregon to go to the Final Four, to go to the Elite 8 and then to lose to Oklahoma, and then Oklahoma go to the Final Four. I still think Oklahoma will go to the Final Four. This one went chalk, and this was one that I did predict correctly. I know, no big upset predictions there, not really the toughest choices, but I'm still proud of myself. I got all 4 of these right: Oregon, Duke, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. But having watched a couple of games now, I don't know who's going to win this Duke-Oregon game. Duke is not deep, and it starts to show in the second half of games. Yale, how about Yale beating Baylor, by the way? Can we take 2 seconds to talk about that? Because I was going to talk about the Duke-Yale game and how Yale came back on them. But I'd be, doing all of us a disservice if I didn't talk about how awesome that Yale-Baylor game was in the first round. That was just incredible. 12 Yale beats the 5 seed Baylor 79-75, and Taurean Prince at the end of the post game interview, he's asked, how does Yale out rebound Baylor? Really kind of a condescending, stupid question that was asked to a guy that's sitting there. He just scored 28 points, got 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He had a phenomenal game. But his team lost, and they very much were a team, hoping to make it to the Sweet 16, and they lose in the first round to the 12 seed Yale, who got their first ever tournament victory. He's already having a bad enough, moment in life right now. And then the reporter asks kind of a dumb question in a condescending way, even like, "How do you guys get out rebounded by Yale?" And classic answer, one of the most classic answers in NCAA tournament interview history. Taurean Prince looks at him and is equally condescending back and explains what a rebound is. And he motioning with his hands. He's like, "Well, so see when the ball comes off the rim and you grab it like this," and he's showing him how you grab a rebound with 2 hands, and you bring it down. That's generally called a rebound. And they got more of those than we did. And so that video, goes viral all over the internet, all over every news outlet. And it was just the most classic answer ever. So, but a great upset by Yale, 12 seed over the 5. Little Rock, Arkansas, we didn't even talk about them. That was a great game over the 5. Purdue, that one went to double overtime. 12 seed beating a 5 seed. The 12s and the 5s were, that always happens. But that was a good one with Little Rock, Arkansas beating 5 Purdue 85-83 in double overtime. So those were a couple of upsets that maybe I failed to mention. There were so many. It was just incredible. Obviously, Stephen F. Austin put the hurt on West Virginia 70-56. That was a 14 seed, Stephen F. Austin beating the 3 West Virginia by 14 points in the first round. That was just incredible. VCU gets the win over Oregon State, the 10 over the 7. So I'm just looking back at a few of the upsets I failed to mention. Wichita State, 65-55 over the 6 Arizona. That was an 11 over a 6. I wasn't surprised at that one at all. And then Gonzaga over Seton Hall by 16. Wasn't surprised by that one at all either. Now, when I say I wasn't surprised at the Wichita State-Arizona game, I wasn't. I did pick Arizona, but I'm being honest with you right now. It was an accident. I filled out my bracket before the play-in game, and I wanted to make sure that Wichita State actually won their play-in game before I marked them down to beat the 6 Arizona. And then I failed to go back and actually change it after Wichita State did win their play-in game. But I knew, they're a great team, and I knew the Pac-12 was not that good. And so I'm not surprised at all that they won. But anyway, that kind of rounds out some of the upsets. But let's get back. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. But let's get back to this Duke-Oregon matchup, because that's what, kind of started all this. It made me think of how Yale came back on Duke. And Duke, they just don't have the depth. And so it makes me a little bit worried about what they can do. I had originally predicted that they were going to lose this exact game to Oregon. But then I watched Oregon against St. Joe's, and it's like, they looked great against Holy Cross, but that's a 1 versus a 16. You better look strong in that game. And then they play St. Joe's, the 8 seed, and that was anyone's game. That was anyone's game, and I actually thought St. Joe's was going to pull it off. I tweeted last night. I said, this looks like the end of the Pac-12's run in the tournament. But Oregon finds a way. They come back, and they had that freshman. I forget his name, but they had that freshman that hit some big shots and had a big 3, hit some free throws, and Oregon comes back and wins, and the Ducks are in the Sweet 16. So I just don't know. To me, this is another coin flip game, Duke and Oregon. If you had Duke in your original bracket, I would take Oregon in your second chance bracket. If you had Oregon in your first bracket, your original bracket, I would take Duke in your second chance bracket. So I have Duke in mine, or excuse me, I don't. I have Oregon in mine. I'm going to take Duke in my second chance bracket. just to kind of hedge my bet. And if you had neither of these teams, if you butchered it entirely and it's truly a second chance for you with this matchup, my gut tells me that I don't know, but isn't that the truth with all these games, right? I mean, nobody knows. The so-called experts. I had a friend in our pool. We make the joke that he had gotten some professional counsel. He had hired somebody to give him advice and whatnot. And another friend got kind of upset, like, "What? You can't do that." And I just laughed. I said, "Honestly, dude, you can bring in any ringer you want. You can get Jay Billis to join our pool, and he's welcome, because nobody knows how to predict these things, really. It's just a total crapshoot. There's a few games here and there that people, correctly predict. Like, I was very confident that Gonzaga would reach the Sweet 16, and they did. But there's plenty of others that I was completely wrong about. Like, who would have guessed that Michigan State was going to lose in the first round? Maybe like the moms of the Middle Tennessee players. Like, other than that, I don't think anyone was thinking Middle Tennessee was going to win that game. So yes, my gut is telling me I don't know. But if I had to pick one right now, Oregon or Duke, I would take Duke. I would take Duke. The question will be in that game, will they be able to hold up in that second half? Because Coach K is only playing like 7 guys. And you just get tired, especially in the college game where there's a lot of press, full court press. I mean, you're just getting tired of these tournament games. So I think that'll be the question mark, but I think they've got several days to rest and get prepared. I think Coach K is the better coach. I think Duke's just the better program. I think they've had a much tougher regular season to prepare them for a game like this. And there's just more history there. They're the defending national champions. So I think Duke finds a way to beat the 1 seed Oregon to reach the Elite Eight. I think the run will stop there, but Duke's looking pretty good. It's just a matter of depth and fatigue. Honestly, they just look fatigued. But the Pac-12 has proven how weak they are, and for that reason, and for how Oregon looked last night against St. Joe's, I'm going to say that Duke will win that game over the 1 seed Oregon in the West. The 2-3 matchup, Oklahoma Texas A&M. That's a Big 12 versus an SEC matchup. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, 2 Oklahoma, 3 Texas A&M. I originally picked Oklahoma in this one, and I would stick with that. I think Buddy Hield is the best player in the country, and when you have a player that good, you can make deep tournament runs, and that's exactly what I think the Sooners are going to do. I think they reach the Final Four. So out of the West, I'm sticking with Oklahoma to come out of the West in the Final Four, which means I'm sticking with all 3 of my Final Four picks that are still left, Michigan State being the one that is not even an option at this point. So we did the East, we did the West, we did the South. That leaves just the Midwest. This is the interesting one. We are absolutely guaranteed of a double-digit seed being in the Elite Eight, either 10 Syracuse or 11 Gonzaga. Those are both storied programs. Neither one of those teams is going to be considered much of a Cinderella because their names and their programs are just too big and too storied. But one of them is going to take on the winner of the Virginia-Iowa State game, and that one went chalk, 1 Virginia versus 4 Iowa State. And I'd take the Cavaliers in this one. I think Virginia looks really strong. They weren't really even talked about much in this opening weekend because they just didn't have close games. They were just kind of rolling, and here they are in the Sweet 16. And I think Iowa State's they're in the Sweet 16, so they're a good team, but they were one of the weaker 4 seeds. But they made it. And they're in the Midwest, and so they get a chance to battle for the Elite Eight. And you could argue that whoever wins that Virginia-Iowa State game, I mean, technically they're playing the 10 or the 11, right? So you could argue that's like kind of a shoe-in to the Final Four. But, I mean, we know it's not because it never is. But I would be kind of surprised to see either Syracuse or Gonzaga make their way to the Final Four. That would be cool, just because it's cool to have double-digit seeds in the Final Four. I don't see it happening, but I'm going to take Virginia in that 1-4 matchup in the Midwest, and then in the 10-11 matchup, Syracuse-Gonzaga, I would take the Zags. The Zags big men, Wiltshire and Sabonis, that I knew that they would be the difference makers against the Utes to kind of neutralize Pirtle, and they were. And I think Syracuse has that 2-3 zone. And they only run that 2-3 zone on defense. That's all they do. And the best way to beat a 2-3 zone is to have good play on the interior, get the ball into your big men, at the free throw line, and they can kind of do a big man game down low or in the key and break down that 2-3 zone, get guys to collapse, dish it back out for threes. Wiltshire can hit the three. Sabonis and Wiltshire can both hit the mid-range jumpers. And I think that Gonzaga is going to beat Syracuse and go on to the Elite Eight. And that'll be kind of cool. That'll be cool to see a West Coast Conference team, the only team from the West Coast Conference that got in the tournament in the Elite Eight as an 11 seed. I mean, defying all odds, right? So maybe the West Coast Conference not getting as much love as it should. BYU has a quarterfinal NIT game tomorrow night. That's Tuesday against Creighton. And if they win that one, which I think they will, they're in the Final Four of the NIT. And they were really the third best team, third place team in the West Coast Conference. St. Mary's, was the second place team. So it makes you wonder. You see all these Pac-12 teams going down, and you see the second place West Coast Conference team just beat up on the second place Pac-12 team, and it makes you wonder, like maybe the committee needs to pay a little bit more attention to the West Coast Conference and maybe not give the Pac-12 as much love as they're getting with all of their teams going down. But anyway, so I'm taking Gonzaga and Virginia, and then I'd say Virginia makes it to the Final Four now. So my Final Four is going to be the 1 seed Kansas out of the South, the 2 seed Oklahoma out of the West, the 1 seed North Carolina out of the East, and the 1 seed Virginia out of the Midwest. So I think this tends to happen, every year, the opening round, tons of cool upsets. It's a lot of fun. A little bit fewer upsets into the Sweet 16, a little bit fewer into the Elite Eight. And by the time you reach the Final Four, generally you're looking at like 4 really stud top teams that were like clearly like top 10 type teams at the end of the year before the seedings took place. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get 4 out of the top 6 or 7 or 8 teams that were in the country this year battling it out in the Final Four in Houston. So it should be pretty cool. I think we're in for a real treat. So if you're doing your second chance bracket, that's my recommendation. But hedge your bets, kids. Hedge your bets. Don't bet because it's not cool. But if you did, hedge them because you've got a chance to, kind of right the ship a little bit on your second chance bracket. So again, the ACC wins the best award. Pac-12 wins the worst award. And before we end the podcast today, this has been a really fun one, just talking basketball here, just shooting the bull by myself, talking about the tournament. I'm looking at the timer here, and I'm up to 43 minutes. This has been a lot of fun. But I have to talk real quick before we end about that Warriors-Spurs game. That was a game in the NBA that I was looking forward to for months, honestly. And guess what? We get to see it 2 more times before the end of the season. And I think both teams, they want to win. They want to beat that other team. Maybe we're going to see, as it gets more solidified that the Warriors are the 1 seed, and maybe they've already beaten, the 72-10 mark. Maybe they start to let up a little bit and they don't worry about, playing all their guys. But until then, we know they're going for 73 and we know they want home court. And so they got to win a few, they got to keep winning because the Spurs are hot on their trail. But the Spurs, they get the win 87-79 in San Antonio over Golden State. So Golden State now has 7 losses. They're like 62-7 or something. And Curry only had 14 points. He was 4 of 18 from the field, 1 of 12 from 3. Did have 6 boards and 6 assists. But the question is, can the Spurs beat the Warriors in a 7-game series? I don't think so. They can, but it's unlikely. That's the best way to put it. They could. They could do it. They're a good team. They're a really good team. But I think the Warriors are going to have home court. It's not impossible for the Spurs to steal that home court advantage, but it's pretty close with how few games are left in the season and how many games the Spurs are behind. I think they're behind 3 games or 4 games even. So to make up 4 games in like 15 games with a team as good as the Warriors, it's just not going to happen. So the Warriors are going to get home court, and as long as they have home court, I just don't see them losing a 7-game series this year. It'll be surprising to me if they don't win the NBA championship. They're clearly the favorites, but if anyone can beat them, it's the Spurs or honestly, I do think the Cavs could have a chance as well. Again, I think it's unlikely, but those are the teams that would have the best chance, in my opinion, to take them down. But you never know. Maybe they lose a 7-game series at some point. But the thing about this game was the Warriors had just played the night before, so they're on the second game of a back-to-back on the road without Bogut, and I feel like they were missing Spates maybe as well. So, I mean, they're without two key players on the road on the second night of a back-to-back. I mean, if there's ever been ingredients for losing a game, that's it, Have two of your guys out and be on the road on the second game of a back-to-back. I mean, that's the ingredients for losing, and that's what happened. The Spurs won, and they only won by 8. So I just feel like with those circumstances, to only win by 8 is not that impressive. So in my opinion, the Warriors are gonna win the NBA title. But that was a cool game. It was really fun to watch, and it was Saturday night, and I had so many games going on, I couldn't even keep up. But what a weekend it was. We've got a fantastic weekend ahead of us, so buckle up. Try and get as much work done as you can today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, because Thursday comes, and we're going to be right back to basketball for the next 4 days in a row, and it's going to be incredible. So get ready for it. Check us out again on iTunes and SoundCloud. So if you're listening to this on the website, check us out on SoundCloud or iTunes. And if you're on iTunes, please subscribe and rate. Same thing on SoundCloud. Give us the old subscribe button or follow button. And that's it for the podcast. Thank you for joining us. You guys are awesome. And we will be back Thursday. That's the plan anyway. We're going to be talking about we want to do our own Sweet 16. It's 2016. We want to find the best team, the best champion of the overall champions of this century. So that should be a fun one. But that's it for the podcast. I'm out.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out stbsportstake.com. Simply the best in sports.